All right. Well, welcome to week 2 of our holiday survival challenge. You guys survived week 1. Week 1, I hope, was actually a really insightful week for you guys. I'm actually going to go ahead. Let me share my screen so we can jump right into this training. Here we go. So I hope, yeah, like I said, this first week really was helpful in terms of giving you guys some insight, right? And I really hope it was powerful in terms of what you got out of that, right? I know it might have been a little uncomfortable for some of you. And, one, I just want to say thank you to those of you who are vulnerable enough to like post your food logs and even give your insights. I know it wasn't like awesome, maybe some of the insights that you got out of this past week, but I could just tell, like, once people started opening up, it was really helpful for others to feel like, oh, not the only one, right? I'm not the only one struggling, not the only one, finding out that, yikes, there's some definite things that we want to improve during this time, right? So, all I want to say is don't judge what you found last week. It's just data. That's all it is, right? And we need that data in order to make the correct changes. So don't look at it as, oh gosh, I have so far to go. You've got data now, you have a starting point now to kind of move from. So thank you to those of you who really, dove in and took advantage of that and did the hard work, because it's not easy. It's not easy really to kind of admit, that we have some holes in our game, right? And that's okay, right? That just means now we can improve on those. So see if I can make this work here. So let me just review really what we were looking to get out of week 1, because that's really going to set us up for what we're going to do week 2, right? So again, the goal really was awareness, okay? And then looking for our current baseline, because that's what we're going to use now to jump off of, right? So there's 3 things you probably were aware of this past week. Quantity, which actually is what we're going to focus on. Quality, right? And then you may have noticed some emotional eating happening there. Now, quantity is really what we're going to focus on. We only have 21 days. We can't really address all 3 of these. So that's the one that we're going to focus on specifically. But you should have had some insights in terms of like quality, right? So like, how much are you really eating out, right? How much snacking is really going on? What about processed versus fresh foods, right? How much is in there? You might have even noticed like how much water intake you're actually having, right? So that should have been eye-opening in terms of your quality, and then we can slowly start working on that. As far as like emotional eating, because I did see some chat about like comfort food in the group, right? I want to first say we all eat emotionally. We're human beings, right? So don't judge yourself for wanting comfort food or even using food as comfort. It's very normal. You're a human, right? Like we all do that, right? I think all I want to encourage you to do is just be curious about what you found out about your emotional eating, right? Like, how often are you doing that? Are you conscious when you're doing that, right? And like how off track or how far off track is that really taking you, right? Those are just things to be curious about and just kind of maybe take some time to dig into. We're not going to do that in this training, but just want to give that little insight there. And again, don't judge yourself. We all do it. Okay. All right. So here's our real plan here is, okay, let's take what we learned in week 1 and set ourselves up to enjoy this holiday season. That's the whole point of this challenge, right? So there's 2 things that we're going to focus on in order to do that right now. I'm sure you got a lot of insight from last week, but we're just going to pull on 2 things to make this a successful holiday season. And for us, that means just maintaining, right? Not setting ourselves even farther away from our goals. And in fact, what we want to do is really set ourselves up for the new year, right? So that is ultimately what we're looking for. So here are our two things that we're going to do this week. Number 1, or actually this whole time, I shouldn't say just this week, we want to focus on calories, right? Knowing our limits is what's going to help us enjoy within some boundaries while not allowing us to kind of go overboard, right? And that's really what we want, is to kind of keep ourselves somewhat in check, but also to allow some enjoyment there. And I'm going to give you some strategies for how to do that. So number one, calories are going to be important. And then two, we're going to focus on protein, right? Protein is the not so fun macro. Nobody's excited about extra protein until you find out how awesome it is. But really, all the yummy food is full of fat and carbs, right? And so we're going to focus our attention on protein because we know it's overlooked and because it's incredibly helpful in controlling hunger and cravings, which are the big roadblocks for most people, especially during this time. So we want to leverage protein to our advantage. Okay, so let's dive in and talk about calories. So keep moving this here. We talked a little bit last week about the fact that most of us probably have some type of calorie gap happening. So you should now have a good idea of what that gap is. Now, I'm going to be sending you guys an email right after this training, just like I did last week, and it's going to have a whole bunch of resources again. And one of those is to actually get into your Cronometer app and find what was my average calories for last week, because that's going to tell us then where that calorie gap exists, right? So I had also given you guys a calorie calculator to just get your estimated expected maintenance, right? And so now we can go ahead and see, okay, where is that gap happening, right? And you guys already made some really great insights in the group. A lot of you notice huge swings in your calorie intake. Some of you already noticed, wow, there is definitely overeating happening, or on the other side, under eating, right? So once we can find, okay, what did we average? What's our baseline? And now we have an idea of what our expected maintenance should be. We can see where that gap exists, right? And so now what we're going to do is we're going to start closing that gap. It's really, really important that we don't allow that gap to continue to exist. Okay. So for those of you who found out, wow, I am definitely under eating, my expected maintenance is actually, way up here. We're going to start to slowly increase that. And I would suggest only about a 10% increase. So we're not going to race you up to whatever your expected maintenance is. So let's just say your expected maintenance, for ease of this, is 2,000 calories, but you found out you're only eating 1,400. I would not suggest all of a sudden you start eating 2,000 calories a day. That's a recipe most likely for weight gain, right? So you're going to maybe bump that 1,400 up to 1,500, get settled in there, bump up again, eventually to 1,600, right? And you're going to slowly, like week after week, increase that, if not even longer, right? On the other hand, if you found out that you're overeating, I would still say we're going to make our way down to what your expected maintenance should be. You could be a little more aggressive than 10%, but I certainly wouldn't go more than like 500 calories, because you will feel that. That's going to be painful to all of a sudden pull 500 calories, right? So you just slowly start ramping that down again. Whole goal is to close that gap. Right now, a lot of you, I read in your submissions when you registered for this, you are ultimately looking for weight loss, like maybe not during this time, obviously, but afterwards, right? And so if you want any hope of being able to do that in the future, you have to close that gap. We cannot, from a gap, then create more of a gap, if that makes sense. So this is really why I was really excited to do this training, because we're basically setting you up for, hitting your goals come the new year. Granted, you put in the work now, right? And like, okay, we're going to have like an abundance of food, and we're going to have this time where we're probably not going to the beach, right? It's winter, right? So we have this time right now where we can actually work on this gap, right? Help the body feel safe. So this is going to really help us set ourselves up while also allowing us to enjoy while staying within our limits. Okay. Now, I want to introduce a strategy for when we have those events, or because I did notice in the Facebook group that some people noticed that, like, once it came to the weekend, definitely eating changed, right? And for most of us, it means more. There's more opportunities. We're going out. We might want a glass of wine, right? And so some of us are realizing, whoa, like calories really kind of get out of control on the weekends or at an event. So I want to give you a strategy that's going to help us be a little more flexible. And it's going to help us enjoy at the same time. Okay. So in this case, we're gonna focus on a weekly average rather than an individual day. So I have a example set up for us to take a look at. So let's just say that your maintenance that you're aiming for is 2,000 calories per day. Okay, so we could just do simple math. 2,000 times 7 means at the end of the week, we should be averaging about 14,000 calories. Okay, so that's overall what we're looking for. So we have two options here in terms of how we can make that happen. So if you are someone where the weekends are difficult, right? Because you're just finding that you're out to eat quite often, or you're just around more calorie dense food, then option one is going to work really well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that 2,000 calories and I'm just going to make a very small deficit. Okay, so instead of 2,000 calories, I'm going to aim for 1,800 calories. Okay, that's Monday through Friday. So some simple math, 1,800 times 5 gives me 9,000 calories. Then on Saturday and Sunday, I can actually have 2,500 calories, both for Saturday and Sunday. 2,500 times 2 is 5,000, 9,000 plus 5,000. You're still averaging 14,000 calories. You will still maintain your weight. But in this case, you are allowed now to indulge a bit on the weekends and actually enjoy, So for me, let's say I was going to be doing this, like taking away 200 calories is literally me not putting cream in my coffee and not putting some pecans in my oatmeal. I will literally not miss those two things, create my 200 calorie deficit, and then allow myself 2,500 on the weekends. Easy enough, right? Option two, if you're someone where events are coming up and you want to enjoy, okay, well then we can slightly alter this example and do this. We'll aim for 1,850 calories 6 days out of the week. That's going to come out to 11,100. That's going to give us 2,900, which is that's plenty of calories on event day. So you can go ahead and enjoy. And again, you add all that up and you're still going to average 14,000 calories. Win, win. Okay, so this is just a strategy for those of you who were kind of struggling with your weekend eating or event eating. By no means you have to do this, but for most people, it's very helpful to just have this strategy in their back pocket so they can pre-plan. But that's the thing, you have to do some pre-planning and you have to be strategic in order for this to work. Now, a couple of things that I just want to make sure that we are very, very clear on. You are not trying to create a huge deficit, right? Some of you noted in the group, gosh, there's days that you're like under 1,000 calories, and then there's days where you're like over like 2,400 calories. That is super stressful on the body. We do not want to create huge swings in calorie intake. That is not our goal here. All we're doing is creating a very small deficit that is allowing for some flexibility, either on the weekend or the event. So please, please, please notice that these are very mild deficits that are not going to be stressful on the body, but they're going to add up and give you that flexibility when I think we really need it, right? Which again, happens to be for most people, either on the weekends or at an event. And to be honest, this is actually how I during my maintenance time all the time. So I will do just a very slight deficit during the week and then allow myself more calories on the weekend because I know I'm going to want to go out to dinner. And it's really hard, as some of you found out, to stay within your calorie ranges when you're eating out because most food is high calorie. That's just how it is, right? So I hope that's helpful for some of you guys. Again, you don't have to use this strategy, but I find it's super helpful for people if they're really willing to kind of put in a little work to figure these numbers out. Okay, so let's move on to the second thing that we're going to focus on, and that's good old protein. That's my favorite macro these days. So why are we going to focus on protein, right? So one, it's the most satiating macro. It's going to fill you up. Most importantly, it's going to control hunger and cravings. And that's really our biggest enemy during this time, is that if we find ourselves too hungry or, cravings are going to start increasing because of all just the yummy food around, we can kind of mitigate that, right? We could be strategic by making sure we're getting in enough protein making sure that we're full off of something that we know is going to be helpful overall for our goals. And it's also very hard to overeat, right? And so we can use that to our advantage. Protein also has a really high thermic effect. All that really means is that it takes a lot of energy to break down. So the more protein we have, the more energy we're actually expending just trying to break protein down in general. So that can work to our advantage in terms of keeping sort of our expenditure higher there. And then for those of us who are on the older side, I'm already in my 40s, right? Protein becomes more and more important. I know that we tend to think, oh, protein is just for, bodybuilders or people trying to put on muscle. Not really. I mean, yes, those people need that. But as we age, we know, I can tell you for sure from experience, my digestion is not what it used to be when I was 20. And so protein can get more difficult for people to break down, right? And that means then you actually need to eat more because you're not actually absorbing as much because that digestive process is not going as smoothly, right? And so in that case, I'm going to give you also a link for some digestive help. If protein is kind of hard for you to digest, maybe it sits in your stomach like a rock, that's probably just a sign that you have low like stomach acid. So HCl, again, I'm going to link this all in the email with some pepsin is going to do wonders in terms of like helping you digest that. And that just might be something that as you age, you just need those digestive aids in order to help that out. Unfortunately, there's not really a way to like increase our digestibility. It's just we're aging, right? So protein, super important. So let's talk about, well, how much do we need? So at a minimum, we're going to take your current body weight and we're going to multiply that by 0.7. That is the minimum that we're going to want to take. Now, this minimum really is for someone who's sedentary. So it's not really super active, probably has a desk job. You will go ahead then and multiply your current body weight times 0.7. And that is how many grams you're going to want per day. At a maximum, you can take your body weight and multiply by 1.2. Now, this is for somebody who is super active. They're resistance training, right? They're on their feet. They're on the go all the time. They're going to want to be on that higher end. For those of you who are somewhere in the middle, you're not sedentary, but you're not super active. You're right in the middle there. I find body weight times 1 is a great place to start. Now, I do have a little caveat here that if you are 20 or more pounds overweight, you're going to want to actually use your target body weight, not your current body weight. Otherwise, that could be a lot of protein, and that could be really difficult to get in. And we'll talk a little bit why we don't want it to be too high of a number there. Okay, so you will have to do a little bit of math here. I have a protein planner I created for you guys so you can figure this out. And of course, if you guys have questions, please reach out. I'm more than happy, to help you guys find an appropriate amount for you. But this is basically what we'll do, anywhere from 0.7 to 1.2, depending on your activity level. Now, if you at all know what the RDI is, those are the recommended amounts. They're super low, actually. It's like body weight times 0.4, which is like just a little over half of the minimum of what I am suggesting. Keep in mind, these recommendations are really just enough to prevent deficiency. So I don't know about you. I'm not just wanting to prevent deficiency. I'm looking for optimal, right? And so they're not set at what will be optimal for someone. It's again, what's the least amount necessary to prevent deficiency? So if you're wondering why, my numbers are higher, because we're looking at optimal, right? And in this case, we're looking to use the leverage of protein to our advantage during this time when we're trying to just maintain and really control hunger and cravings. Okay, so let's keep going. Some considerations that you would kind of think about when you're trying to determine how much. What are your goals right now? We really shouldn't be trying to lose weight during this time. It's really difficult, and that's not the goal of this challenge. But if you were, higher protein is going to be super helpful. You want to look in terms of like your overall calorie intake, right? We don't want protein so high that it's going to push out carbs and fat. We still need carbohydrates coming in and good amounts of fat, right? Especially for hormonal balance, right? So we want to make sure that we're not overdoing it to the point where we're pushing out other macros. That's where it gets hard. That's where people start eating weird because they're skewing their food towards one. So we don't want to create that imbalance. Obviously, the more active you are, the more protein you're going to need, just because there's more recovery that's going to need to happen. Protein breaks down into amino acids. Those are little building blocks to help recovery. If you're strength training, which I know some of you guys are, then you're going to want a little more protein in order to recover and for growth. If you're a leaner individual, then you are going to require more just to hold on to that muscle, keep metabolic rate as high as possible. And then biologically, like how old are you? Because like I mentioned, as we age, our protein increases, our need for protein increases because of repair. I mean, we're just older, right? Things are breaking. And digestibility makes it a little harder to absorb what we're actually eating and consuming. Okay, so when it comes to protein sources, again, I'm going to have a bunch of resources for you guys. We're going to want to look at a wide variety, because that means we're going to get a wide variety of nutrients coming in from those protein sources. I will always suggest that we emphasize whole food versions. Yes, you can look into supplements, meaning like protein powders, collagen powders, protein bars. There's nothing wrong with those. Those just shouldn't be like a majority of how we're taking in our protein, right? They definitely have a place. They just shouldn't be a huge piece of the puzzle. When it comes to that source, of course, animal products are going to be the most dense source, meaning you're going to have more protein grams per ounce than plant sources, but it doesn't mean that we shouldn't include plant sources. In fact, we should. We know that fruits and veggies, grains too, legumes, beans, those things are great for overall health, right? So we want to include those, and we can count those sources of protein as well, right? So if you're having, let's say, half a cup of beans, that's a good like 7 grams of protein. Great, we can count that, right? The only thing that long-term we would want to be careful of is there is obviously going to be fat and carbs that come along with that. So we would want to be conscious that we're not necessarily like overdoing that carbohydrate or fat with that. Now, that's going to be taken care of for us because we've got our 2 goals, calories and then protein, right? So we don't have to worry so much about that piece. So long as calories are controlled and we're hitting our protein source, or I'm sorry, our protein goal, then we don't have to like get super critical of like, well, how much fat, how much carbs. That's going to take care of itself. So primarily you're going to look at meats, poultry, seafood. I'd actually say quality deli meat, dairy, if you tolerate it. I know not everybody tolerates dairy well, so you'll have to decide whether you can tolerate some dairy. Quality jerky, they've got obviously beef jerky, turkey jerky is also out there. Beans and lentils, that's going to count as well. You can eat some tofu, and tempeh as well has actually a good amount of protein in there. And then last, I have powders and bars, because yes, we can include them. I just would suggest they not be your main source of protein. So here's what we're going to do for this week. Here are your action steps. Here's what you're going to move on. So 1, we want to start closing that gap, whether that means we need to start eating a little more consistently, right? Or we need to reduce what we're eating, right? You know what your estimated maintenance should be. And if you're having trouble, like, knowing what that number is, please reach out. I'll help you with that. But we do want to start closing that gap. Remember, if you have plans of wanting to lose weight in the future, that gap has to get closed before the body's going to be receptive to weight loss. Okay, so start closing that gap. Remember, be strategic. Do not just jump your calories up or jump them down. Start to just titrate until we get there. Okay. Second, you're going to find your protein needs, your daily protein needs. I have a worksheet all set up for you guys so that you can do that. Now, here's the thing. If you do not do the next piece, if you do not plan out your protein, it's not going to happen. Protein just doesn't like happen haphazardly. Ask any of my clients, right? You have to plan it out. Without a plan, you're going to fall short, right? And I even saw a lot of that in this past week. As you guys were chatting in the comments, is there was a recognition that, hey, protein is coming in low. Yeah, that's pretty normal. That's how people are going to end up eating if there's no focus for where they should be going, right? So I have a planner where you're going to determine what are my daily needs. We're going to break that up by how many meals, right? I'm going to literally plan that out. I also created a cheat sheet. Actually, I use it with my clients to help them. And I gave you like 4 examples of how to hit like 100 grams a day, how to hit 125 grams a day, right? And a couple more, all the way up to 155 grams. You can see literally how easy it can be actually to hit those without stuffing your face with meat. I promise you don't have to eat meat all day long. I think someone made a mention like I need like meat dessert, right? So we just have to get more conscious about planning, right? Because we can do that without having to shovel down, like I said, massive amounts of meat. I'm also going to give you a recipe pack full of, I think it's 52 high protein recipes. Please use those for ideas. There's everything from like smoothies to breakfast, lunch, dinners, desserts, where you can sneak in protein and pretty simple recipes that you can use to your advantage. Okay. And then what we're going to focus on is just tracking calories and protein, or I should really say we're tracking everything, but our focus is going to be hitting a calorie target and then a protein target, and then not really worrying about about carbohydrate and fat, not during this time, just to make this process a little easier, right? And then I gave you the skill of cycling your calories possibly for those events, or even for the weekends if those tend to be problematic for you, okay? Now, this week, you're welcome to continue posting your food logs. In fact, I know some of you mentioned that it was great accountability. So by all means, you can still do that. But my emphasis this week, I want us to share some of our pictures of our protein meals, right? So we can get ideas. Again, it's just encouraging to see, what other people are doing and just to get ideas and get that reinforcement from other people as well. So you're going to get points this week for posting those pictures. And then of course, commenting on each other's posts. So make sure you guys are filling out your tracker. Remember, you are getting points. There is a winner, right? There is a $500 cash prize at the end of this. So make sure you're filling out that tracker and staying up to date with your action steps. All right, so that's your homework for this week. I will give a moment here to say if there's any questions, I can answer those now. If you guys got my email this weekend, I'm not sure if I'll be able to do a Q&A this week. I'll be heading out of town Thursday night, so I don't know if I'll be able to make that call midweek, but you guys are always welcome to email me, reach out on the Facebook group. Actually, I'd really like the questions to go in there. That way everybody sees the answer, so everybody benefits. But I'm still here, but I will be out of town this weekend, so I'm not sure if that Q&A will happen. But let's see, are there any questions? All right. Cool. Christine, you send what to you? What do you want me to say? I don't even know what I said because there's kind of a delay with Facebook Live and Zoom. Let me know. And I would love to send whatever that is to you, but let me know. Any other questions? I'm going to scroll back actually as well. Make sure. All right, well, hopefully, Christine, you let me know what you'd like me to send you, and I will absolutely do that. Have fun this week, you guys. I hope it is helpful to have your targets. You should know now what you're aiming for. You're going to get an email in the next like 10 minutes or so with everything listed out for you, videos, PDFs, planners, recipe packs, all that good stuff. And you should be well on your way to enjoying this holiday season. So Also, just make sure we got one more week. We're going to focus on exercise next week. That is the last piece of the puzzle that we're going to put together to help you get through this holiday season. So don't miss out on that. That's going to be a fun one as well. All right. Well, I'm going to let you guys go. Have a wonderful week. I'll send out those resources. Christine, I don't know if you can hear me. Let me know what you are looking for, and I will send that out to you. Have a great Monday. I'm going to go have dinner. We'll see you guys next week. All right. Bye.